Mr. Papadakis.
Hi
Stephan,
there.
thank you so much for being with us tonight. Congratulations on winning the championship this year again. And so I think we're going to leave you in the hands of Paul to wrap this absolutely incredible week.
We've just had a day full of champions.
Yes,
Good to see you.
great.
See you, Stephan.
Stefan, welcome. You're not going to probably remember it. You meet so many people, but I've met you. I think at Long Beach a few years ago at Formula Drift event, and I was in awe because my secret guilty pleasure is I hop on the live stream and watch Formula Drift. I'm a fan, and you're the man.
Thanks. Yeah, that's interesting to hear from, what I would consider a traditionalist, motorsports traditionalist.
I like, I like things that surprise me and that are fresh. And when I met Jim and Ryan years ago and got to know them and was really exposed to Formula Drift in the early 2000s, actually, when they first got together, I just was taken with it. And along the way, you've written the story of Formula Drift. And you had a life before that where you were already known to me. I was aware of you and what you were doing, but you've defined greatness within this category from the beginning. And I would first like you to share with our audience how you got there. The backstory before Formula Drift, and talk to us about. You're a mad scientist with a race car. I'd like to have you talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So I'm 44 years old, and I've been basically racing something since I was 13. I did radio-controlled cars. I was really young. I thought I wanted to be a professional radio-controlled car racer, and until I got my license and found that you could modify and do all kinds of fun stuff with real cars. And the toys went away, and the real cars came in pretty quick. And when I was 16, 17, 18, I had a little Honda Civic. And, I lived in Los Angeles in Orange County. And that was the reliable first car that I was able to get from my family. And, but little did they know that there was a whole underground scene of people drag racing and stuff, of these little Honda Civics and Acura Integras and whole, import scene. So that attracted me a lot. Obviously I liked the Mustangs and the Camaros and the big V8s, but that just wasn't what I had available to me. And it actually worked out great because working with the 4-cylinder engines and drag racing, the front wheel drive cars, and something that was really obscure at the time. Like we'd go to the drag race track and they'd be like, what are you even doing here? Why would you even bother with a front wheel drive car?
Yeah.
It gave me the ability and friends as well, to blaze our own trail and to figure out ways to get a front wheel drive car to have traction drag racing, which nobody had figured out, and high horsepower turbocharged 4-cylinders, which were only the only high-end motorsports and maybe Toyota doing their GTP program, and some of those other things were doing such things with 4-cylinder, or maybe in Europe and far away. But the local tuners or anybody that I would meet, they only knew about or the guys at ground camshafts and stuff. They only did V8 stuff. So it allowed me to learn a lot. Progressed with Battle of the Imports, which was the import racing, and then the NHRA Sport Compact drag racing. And then by the time I got to my mid-20s, I'd been drag racing for 10 years, and we had gone, quarter mile in 6.52 seconds at 215 miles an hour, and a rear-wheel drive, a pro stock chassis, but with a twin turbo Acura NSX engine. It was really fun. And it was a lot of trials and tribulations along the way, trying to figure out all these engines that no one had made that kind of horsepower with. But I was ready to do something different. And I had been drag racing for a long time and had, dreams of grandeur. I thought, if I'm drag racing and I could handle these really high horsepower, cars, I should be able to go out there and road race and stuff. And got myself a shifter card and went to the local track and pretty quickly realized that, these 12-year-old kids are smoking me.
They have a tendency to do that. Yeah.
And you had Brian Herta before, and I'm sure his son, you know, very young age, were, you know, excellent drivers, you know, around a road course. And for me in my mid-20s to try to pick that up was challenging, and also trying to run the racing business at the same time. And so I got into the drifting. I thought maybe this would be a fun way of sort of reigniting my driving career.
Yep.
Kind of starting down at the bottom, but at the same time, the sport was just starting to get popular, you know, around 2005, 2006 here in the US. And, you know, after a couple of years of driving the B car, I had brought in Tanner Faust to drive our A car. And he was out there winning already, and I was running the team and not really practicing as much as I should have, and not doing great in the competition. I realized, hey, I'm actually really enjoying building the car and building the cars and running the team, and guys like Tanner are such good drivers, and they could really take the cars that we were building at the shop and extract the most out of them. I felt like, well, there's probably a really good formula here, and I'm going to continue with that. So I retired from driving professionally, and just focused on building the best cars we could for the best drivers.
And it's worked, you know, and I think that when, you know, you changed basically direction here, did you have a vision for what you were going to do? Because you caught a wave when you were in the import drag racing scene too. That was really happening when you were involved in it. And then you caught this, you know, right at a moment when it was surging in interest in really the it sport within motorsport. What were you seeing the outcome? Where were you going with this? Did you have a vision?
There was a vision, but my personality is very, you know, I'm always looking around and wandering eye and seeing what's new, and, you know, is the grass greener over there? And because I'm always trying to stay interested in what I'm doing. And for whatever reason, if things get monotonous, I just kind of lose interest, and it feels like Groundhog Day in my life, and I just don't like that feeling, you know? And so, you know, the drifting, it felt like in the mid 2000s, you know, 2005 or so, it felt like, oh, this is import drag racing. You know, it was 10 years before that, you know, in the mid 90s or so.
Yeah.
And I was ready to move from straight line racing to something with curves. And it just seemed like there was an opportunity. The cost, this is really what it comes down to. It looked like fun. The cost of entry was low. The rule book was really thin, right? And the cars were not expensive to build. So having that formula, it allowed me to sort of do it on the side with the drag racing for a year or two and not make a big investment. And if it didn't work out, have some fun doing it and learn about what make these cars good at drifting, and learn another level of prep. And some, you know, that situation worked out well with drift, and we're still doing it very successfully today. You know, but in the, you know, around 2008 or 2010 or so, I wanted to go off-road truck racing, and, you know, looked at the Lucas off-road short course series.
Yeah.
And I was sure, I was like, man, this thing is going to be in stadiums in a couple of years. Because I grew up, you know, in the late 80s when I was a little kid watching the Mickey Thompson off-road.
Yeah, I love the Mickey Thompson off-road championship. I miss it, actually, and I miss the Lucas championship.
Yeah, so that's what I saw. So I bought a truck, and I was like, I'm going to be the driver for this. And we started racing. We raced for a couple of years with it, in parallel with also doing the drifting. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, literally the most epic racing I've ever done. But, you know, the new tracks that they opened up they started at the next year were Reno and Lake Elsinore. And pretty quickly I realized this isn't going to stadiums, and it's going to continue to be an extremely fun, extremely competitive sport, but hard for me to make it, do it professionally.
Yeah.
So pulled back on that, and then doubled down on drift, you know, around 2012, 2013, you know, there was another acceleration in popularity, especially globally with drift. We had taken a lot of, at the shop, a lot of what we learned in off-road actually, with suspension setup and making the cars, the trucks handle well. And I was able to learn certain things from that and then apply it to even the drift. And just in a little sidebar, I was also doing some Honda Challenge racing with NASA just for fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just grassroots stuff and learning stuff there with front wheel drive, Honda CRX racing that we were to take and help with the drifting professionally as well. So I'm kind of a little bit all over the place, but I guess that's kind of how I am. I'm always trying to learn as much as I can. And what we do as like team owners or as a chassis tuner or a crew chief, can't really go to school for these things.
No, you can't.
You have to experience it, right? And I feel like if you spend too much time just in the sport and in the same circle of people, then you're kind of limited in what you're going to learn. So I try to get out of that and learn as much as I can.
Well, I got to commend you for that, because that actually, for me, in my journey through the sport, that's been the lifeblood of it for me. I move around from one area of the sport to another, and I find I learned something. I learned something from Formula Drift I hadn't realized. I hadn't realized the power of culture within a movement culture, within a sport. Just observing the energy that Formula Drift had culturally, there was like a cultural gravity to pull people toward it. There were belief systems. The energy drinks were all involved in Formula. You're wearing a rock star shirt at the moment, the reach and power of the culturally connected brands that were involved with it. It was interesting. And I, early on when I was racing, I had a mentor and a person that helped me along named Mike Hull, who runs Chip Ganassi Racing as the managing director. And he said to me early on when I was complaining and blaming the car, he stopped me and said, racing is learning. And that stuck with me since I, in my early 20s. And you find people like you that treat everything as a learning opportunity. And I think that one of the questions I have to ask is, what have you learned about yourself in this journey? Because this, your accomplishments are quite remarkable. And when I look at the people that have been flowing through these panels, very few of them have the consistent accomplishments year after year after year in a very competitive arena. What did you learn along the way about yourself?
I learned that I like setting goals that are lofty, and I really enjoy the journey there, not necessarily getting to that goal. Because every time I get to any goal, it's like, okay, what's next? And I'm trying to pick goals that I'm going to enjoy the journey there. And I don't want to have a life of, oh, this is hard to do, and being a masochist and trying to, making all these sacrifices in my life in order to have some championship goal or race winning goal or something like that. It all has to be enjoyable. So I remember watching an interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and what he was saying, what made him a very successful bodybuilder was he would get in the gym and he would lift these massive weights and he would get this crazy pump. And he said it was like sex. It was like having an orgasm. And he was saying like, he enjoyed the training so much that is what allowed him to have so much success. Because he's like, imagine if you go and you do what you do every day, but you enjoy it that much, like you're just going to get really good at it because every day you want to do more of it.
Yeah, so it's basically almost this continuum of dedication and commitment, being open to learning through good and bad. And I will tell you, I was in a meeting in an office building in Santa Monica, and I kept hearing this thumping, every now and again when I was having this meeting. And I finally asked the guy, I said, what is that? Oh, that's Arnold. He's in the office above us and he has a weight set. and it was just, and it's freaking, lunchtime. This guy's just pounding away. And, I thought to myself when I first got into the sport, I found a lot of people that were always in the mindset of what it took to be a racer. They were absorbing everything. They were observing. They were processing. It was a journey that was never over. They were never completely off, actually. They could not turn it all the way off.
Yeah, that's something that I'm trying to work on a little bit. Every time I hang out with a friend, it like segues into something with work or cars or something, and but it's fun, and that's why I have friends that have similar interests to me.
Well, I've been black flagged at the supermarket for being too aggressive with my cart. But traffic there is really irritating, and there's nobody with a white flag, so you just got to make your way through the traffic. But I think that where I'm going with this too is, along the way you've done some pretty crazy ass stuff with cars. You are a mad scientist. And you built a few Franken cars here. I would like you to talk about what inspired you, because obviously they're favorites of mine, because I just look at it and go, no way. And I think that's when I first noticed you. I thought to myself, really? So run down the list of mad science projects here.
Oh, geez. Okay. So, I mean, some of the more recent ones would be with Scion, one of the new Toyota brand.
Yes.
We built a Scion TC, the first generation. I want to say it was a 2010 or so model. And in order to do drift, you need a rear-wheel drive car. Well, these cars came front-wheel drive, so we converted it to rear-wheel drive, and we said, well, would it be an exciting engine? Kind of looked around at the different engines that Toyota had, and they were racing NASCAR at the time, and then we said, hey, I talked to my buddy, with the guy that worked over at Scion, one of the executives. I said, hey, how do we get one of those, NASCAR engines? He's like, you can't get one of those. Like, we don't even know anybody over there. Let me make some phone calls. What if I was to maybe find something? So we were able to, I knew somebody down at TRD who knew somebody else and connected them, and we were able to get a couple of those NASCAR engines, and we put it in a used to be front-wheel drive Scion TC and went out there and we're very successful with it.
It wasn't boring.
No, it sounded, it was amazing sounding, and we did a merge type of, so we did that one. We built a what was it, a Volkswagen Passat for Tanner Faust.
Yes.
Tanner calls me, a couple years after he kind of retired from drift. He's doing the rallycross stuff with Volkswagen. He's like, hey man, we want to do like a demo, or actually he wanted to come back and do some form of the drift events with a Volkswagen Passat. And I said, Volkswagen Passat, 4-door, huge car, comes with a 4-wheel drive or front wheel drive. I said, okay, well, how about we put a Chevy LS7 engine in it? And he's like,
why not?
Maybe, yeah, we don't talk about it too much. Volkswagen might be okay with it. And I said, okay. So we started the project, and I said, okay, what can we do that's something different? So on that specific one, we wanted it to sound really cool. So we did a 8-to-1 exhaust. So it's this octopus, tentacles. So you got 4 exhaust pipes from either side merging in front of the engine, all into 8-to-1, and then it had to turn and come back under the car again, and it solved a couple of problems. One, it sounded really cool because then it sounded like it was at 12,000 RPM all the time. But with the front-wheel drive chassis with the firewalls really far forward, and the way the Formula Drift rules are, you couldn't get the headers past the firewall and the cross member and still make it legal. So we had to take all those headers and make it into one pipe and just bring the one pipe to the rear of the car so we could fit within the rules. So it actually was still a car that he brings out to demos and stuff like that. He converted it to a he converted it to a 4-seater. We did that a couple years after that. And so now it's the Drift Taxi.
So I'm just throwing it down here. I'm ready whenever. I just saw Tanner recently in Chattanooga. So if you two talk, I'm ready for my ride.
He brings it out a couple times a year. He brings it out for some kind of event.
Yeah, because I just got to tell you how much I find that amusing, and I love things that spark people's imagination, make them smile, make them just love the crazy passion that someone has to go do that. And you're wired that way from what I can see.
Yeah, the working with a company like Toyota and before that Scion in Formula Drift, there was some specific criteria. We have this car that we want to promote, and it's a front wheel drive car, but it's going to be challenging to build. And then so that was the challenge, was to make that competitive against Mustangs and Corvettes and Dodge Vipers and stuff like that. And it's weird. It's like two-sided. It's like one side is all right, well, this is going to be a challenge, and if we succeed, then it feels, a little bit more like we've achieved more. But at the same time, to be, totally transparent here, if we don't succeed, then we kind of had this built-in excuse, like, we started with a front-wheel drive car, and we kind of started below par. But either way, the way that NASCAR is going with the more spec stuff, and the way IndyCar has gone with more spec stuff, and I think it absolutely helps with the close racing, and it's hard to debate that. You can't really debate that. They have excellent racing, but I think that what they're able to, where they're finding the edge with the teams and the crew chiefs and the drivers, maybe not the drivers, but the team. Unfortunately, you can't really share a lot of that stuff, I think, because they don't want the other teams to know about it.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we do is culture and community, and sharing these builds that we do, and having these really obscure cars that no one else really builds and competes with. We can show everybody all the stuff we're doing, and it's not really a competitive disadvantage, because no one's using that to build their own front-wheel drive converted car against us.
And what's great about it is it reminds me, I've been shopping for retirement homes today because I'm near the end of my cycle. I'm kidding you, but I look at where I started. That was what everybody did. Basically, just about every race car was a science project.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And they built them here. You're in Huntington Beach, not far from us. And so back in my day, you had Dan Gurney building crazy ass race cars nearby. I drove by TRD on the way here today. You had just about every car builder, chassis builder at the top end of the sport was actually here in Southern California, from drag racing to road racing to Indy cars. And there wasn't a lot of same old. And that imagination and ingenuity is kind of a hallmark of what attracted me to the sport. Do you think what you're doing now is one of the last bastions of that?
Well, I don't know if it's the last, but it's one of the drift is one of the few categories that I know of where the rulebook is still pretty thin and quite open, and the technical folks over there are relatively open to new types of builds. So just kind of fortunate to be in that place. I don't know if there's a lot of other racing that allows that.
Yeah, and I think the audience, another one of my sayings is the audience owns you. The audience wants that.
Yeah, well, there is I think as I've researched more and more on more traditional racing and kind of how it's progressed is, you have all these different evolutions, and eventually people find out what is the most competitive setup, and people just kind of gravitate towards that. And maybe that's just the evolution. Maybe eventually drift will be that, and everybody's running whatever chassis and engine is the most competitive because that's the most important thing.
I hope not. I personally hope not, because that's one of the reasons I care about it and watch it, and I'm an advocate of it. Is that there's always something surprising and refreshing, and you see things that you're not going to see somewhere else. And for you, you're at a point where there's not a lot left to accomplish. You've accomplished everything here. What do you want to see, as you're going forward here? What is next? What's your legacy in this sport?
Oh, geez. I don't really think that far ahead about those things. It's just trying to, right now it's having endurance within the sport. Yeah. So we want to keep it going. Frederick and Ryan and Jonathan Castro that drive with the three cars that we build, love driving and want to continue to do that. So we want to continue to be able to build cars for them. And then the guys that we have working at the shop, Aldo and Sean and Matt and everybody that comes out to the track, they love what they do. So right now it's really, and I have to mention Jennifer Horsey, that really helps us with all marketing and communications, is an instrumental part of our team. All of us love what we do, and it's like, let's just try to keep this going. Let's keep it going. Let's keep having fun with this. And if it's winning championships and if it's winning events, then we're going to keep having that as the bullseye. if it's continuing to create content and get people interested in the cars that we're building and want to watch them on track, not necessarily because they're always interested in the competition, but maybe they just want to see the science project do what it's built to do.
And you're good at that. Your team is very good at that, having, watched these content streams. And by the way, Jen, someone we work with as well, and at Racer too. And I think that your sense of, you have a sense of what drives community here. And if, you're the last speaker on the last day of an event that's run basically for 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, with everybody in the world of motorsports here, from Formula One to WEC, WRC, IndyCar, NASCAR, off-road racing, and short track, everything, drag racing was here. You get to have the last word about what this sport should be to the people who care about it, because you've succeeded at doing something. And one of the reasons I was excited to actually have a chance to talk to you is it touches back on something I believe, that the sport succeeds when we give people what they really want. And we give them something to believe in. We give them things that they don't see everywhere else. We're in the inspiration business, not just in the entertainment business. And the cars themselves have personalities. They're things that people care about, not just the wheel-to-wheel competition. The car's a living, breathing thing. And what attracted me to you and made me notice you is you got that from the beginning. And so tell me about what you want this sport to be, because you've defined it here with what you've been doing. You and your teammates have. Tell me what you want to have happen.
Thanks for that. That's deep. Look, I'm a passionate person working in an industry that I'm passionate about, working with a lot of people, male and female, that are passionate about motorsports and whatever it is their category within, motorsports and automotive. And it makes me want to wake up every day and continue to be a part of it. That's the main thing, man. It's just, every time I go to, whether it's PRI or SEMA or a drift event, or even just going to NHRA the other weekend at the Pomona finals,
yeah,
you just continually finding people that want to be there. And I love that.
And you show up with intention to succeed when you're there. And that will to win, I mean, let's go back to Arnold, stay hungry.
Yeah, man. I have to balance that, because look, I want to stay hungry. I want to win, but I'll tell you what, that's not what that drives me. What drives me is the passion just for motorsport, not just for the passion for motorsport, the passion for driving, the passion for cars, hanging out with like-minded individuals that also have passion for those things. And if winning is what I need to do to stay in this industry, to keep that thing going, then that we're going to keep pointing at that. But I'm telling you what, winning is important and it definitely feels good, but we spend a lot of time not winning. And if you can't enjoy not winning, then it's going to be a lot of time that you're not going to enjoy. So I got to enjoy everything.
And those are great words to everybody in the sport and to this industry, because you don't always win.
No, when we go to Formula Drift event, there's 32 drivers.
Yeah.
Got 31 going home that didn't win. So, but hopefully a lot of them still enjoyed being there.
And you have an amazing record in life, and it's a privilege to actually be able to talk to you without a bunch of cars roaring by in the background, and you being busy, which is how I happened to meet you before. And I'd love to I want to say one thing. I'd love to actually be able to come by and see you at the shop and talk to you, because you're an inspiration to me in what you do. And I like that you're an OC guy.
Yeah, so our shop is in Carson, and you're welcome anytime, and you guys know how to reach out to me, obviously. So.
Yeah, so you're in Carson now. That's right. Okay, so I'm down with it. I'd love to see I love science projects. So and thank you for being with us, Stephan. This has been really enjoyable for me, and keep doing what you do.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys, and I'm honored to be the final guest this week.
The concept for EPARTRADE is basically, in my opinion, there's a big hole in the internet. So the internet started many years ago, but there's never been an online business community for racers on the World Wide Web. The need for EPARTRADE is actually quite obvious. Basically, people in the business of auto racing need a place online to hang out and get their problems solved.
It's extremely simple for a buyer or for a supplier to interact on the platform. The first thing you need to do is sign in, which is free. And the second thing is, when you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information. If it's a company, you click on request more information, and then from there, it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
You can go to epartrade.com, you become part of a community of businesses in racing, and it makes sourcing products much easier than just on the internet or using Google.
At EPARTRADE, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier through an email.
More than that, it's a place to go just to keep current every day. So it's a good place to start your workday in your racing business or in your offices of your professional race team. And you know you're current when it comes to new technology, industry news, technical papers, technical videos, all of that and more. We're not looking for a million hits per day. All we want is people who are really the volume buyers of racing products in the racing industry to be part of the little world of EPARTRADE. We have racing businesses participating from around the world. So you get suppliers from around the world, you get buyers from around the world.
EPARTRADE really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
There are two types of people, racers and everyone else. Racer Magazine is for those who believe that racing is a way of life. Racer embodies the excellence that defines a sport driven by passion, courage, and ingenuity. Get 1 year of both Racer's print and digital edition for only $39 with instant access to our entire digital issue archive. Subscribe now at info.racer.com.